The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Ski Sundown in nearby New Hartford, Connecticut, offering skiing and snowboarding 7 days and nights a week until 10 p.m. Ticket and lesson information at skisundown.com. Winter made better. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by UMass Amherst School of Public Policy. Admissions now open for graduate programs in 2025. Learn how to become a changemaker at umass.edu/SPP.
Welcome to the Fabulous 413. I'm Khalees Smith.
And I'm Monty Belmonte. Later in the show, a father-son duo doing two events in Northampton this weekend. One taking to the water and the other to the stage as we talk with Tom and Stefan Wiener.
And we'll take the temperature of Head Start in Western Mass as the program receives a bit of national attention and heat with Nicole Blaze, Executive Director of Head Start Western Mass.
But first, we're always excited to get your questions for word nerd Emily Brewster.
Especially when they are a bit on the sly side.
Emily Brewster, resident wordster from Merriam Webster, our dictionary in Springfield. One of the things that we love to do is relay questions from our listeners here on the Fabulous 413 to you. And I invite you, listener, if you have a linguistic question of any kind, to send it to us at thefab413@nepm.org. They don't just have to be panicky questions for Congressman Jim McGovern at that email address. They can be banal or important linguistic questions, like this one from Wes Bowser, who is a school counselor at South End Middle School, saying, "Hi, Monty and Khalees. Today I'm writing in semi-official capacity, official enough to use the work email address from the Springfield Public School System. The counseling team and some students at South End Middle School over at 36 Margaret Street are wondering about the official and possible deviant pronunciations of the word mischievous. The majority of us are in the mischievous camp, while certain others are of the mischievous sect," which I guess I am because that's how I read it. "Is there maybe a cultural or geographical bent as to who pronounces this, how, and where? Sincerely, Wes Bowser." Emily Brewster, what is your take on this word that I'm not going to say again?
You're not going to say mischievous, mischievous?
Well, yeah, I will eventually, but I wanted to leave it out there for you to say the way that you thought you should say it.
Well, I will start by saying that I consistently said only mischievous until the beginning of my employ at Merriam Webster.
Uh-oh.
Then I saw that the Merriam-Webster dictionary identifies mischievous as a non-standard pronunciation, and I switched.
Oh, so you were grammar shamed by your own company.
I guess, yeah, or I let it be a corrective. Yeah. Mischievous is the standard pronunciation, but mischievous has a long history. That pronunciation is entered in our dictionary. The spelling that goes with it is not entered in our dictionary because all the spell checkers of the world just take the I out. I personally like the mischievous pronunciation for a number of reasons. Well, first of all, I want to ask each of you, how do you say it?
I've always said
mischievous?
mischievous. No.
I say mischievous.
I give it an extra syllable to prove that I'm being tricky.
It'd be fun to write like a story where there was a villain whose name was Mischievous. Anyway, mischievous, non-standard mischievous, the way that I have said it, mischievous, looks like how it's spelled too, right? There's not an extra I or something or E in there that would make you have it with this third syllable.
No, there is not. But there is something going for it, and that is the fact that we just don't end words in English with "thus." We really don't. The only other word we have that does what mischievous does is the word grievous.
No, that's not
true.
true.
It's very formal. I mean, grievous is a perfectly good word, but it's underused. Mischievous,
General Grievous, another villain from the Star Wars world.
Just as Count Dooku predicted.
Yes, aptly named. Yes, that is an apt name.
And I'm trying to think
General
of places
Grievous.
where grievous gets used that isn't in front of mistake.
Yeah. But here's the thing, Emily Brewster, you said that we don't have any other words that end in "vus." Shameless plug for your flippin' bar, the rendezvous.
But that's an imported word. That's French.
That's true, but it ends in V-O-U-S.
But we're talking phonetics.
Okay,
right?
all right.
The rendezvous does not end in "vus." It is not the rendezvous.
It is to me. The rendezvous, I often like to call it.
Please, no.
Yeah.
But no, it's rendezvous. There are plenty of words in English, and including some very common words that end in "vius." right?
Okay.
Impervious, envious, obvious, previous, devious. And to give props to Khalees here for pointing out the relationship between mischievous and devious. I think there is some semantic link between the two that really increases the draw of the mischievous pronunciation.
So even though it's not like really spelled that way, there's a tendency because of other words to say it that way.
Also, after
Yes.
that long string of words, it sounds like we're in a Cole Porter song.
Good authors too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words, writing prose.
It's interesting to me that the spelling of this has not caught up with the really pretty common pronunciation. And by the way, just to answer the question that the
Wes
writer
Bowser, school
had,
counselor from South End Middle School in Springfield?
Yes. As far as I know, there is no particular geographical, nexus for where this is most commonly used. I think that it's used because of just the frequency of the VS suffix as opposed to the VUS. It just sounds more natural to English to say mischievous than it does to say mischievous to people who use all these other words that end in VS.
It sounds more mischievous to say mischievous. Like you're being
Really?
mischievous by saying mischievous. Like I
Exactly.
decided to throw an extra syllable in there for no reason.
See, that is my point entirely.
Yeah.
It sounds just a little more tricksy, like
Yeah.
you're doing like extra things.
It's naughty to say
Yes.
this incorrectly.
Like you have schemes going on. You've thrown a whole extra syllable in there.
I love the mispronunciation of words on purpose.
Like Target.
Exactly. Things like that I love. I saw this guy on Twitter named Tom Friedman who said he started a petition to require every scientist to pronounce molecules and particles as if they're heroes of Greek mythology. So molecules and particles. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I live for.
It goes with the misspelling too, but that string of somebody misspelling and mispronouncing the word pregnant too,
Yeah.
of like the early aughts, that still makes me laugh a lot.
Am I pregnant? Am I pregnant? Am I pargant? Am I gregnant? Am I pegnate? Is there a possibility that I'm pegrant?
Also, things like calling manslaughter man's laughter.
Thanks, Jazzy Moo.
Keep on laughing at me. You're gonna drive me to commit manslaughter.
It's definitely an improvement.
It's a mischievous thing to
Semantically
do.
even.
It might even be mischievous.
To pronounce it that way.
I want to know how you two feel about the pronunciation etc.
As opposed to et cetera.
Which is how I say it.
Yes.
I think I say et cetera, but it's definitely from King and I.
Etc., etc., etc.
It's not from King and I for me. It's always been because there's a T there.
What is the standard pronunciation of this word?
Well, the standard pronunciation is et cetera. And what does it mean in Latin exactly? And so forth. And others, especially of the same kind, is how we gloss it, etc. But again, there is this long-standing alternate pronunciation, etc., which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And this one is explained by a linguistic term called assimilation. Assimilation is when there's a change of a sound in speech so that it becomes identical with or similar to a neighboring sound.
Mm-hmm.
And we do assimilation all the time in natural speech. We do not enunciate the very end of each word and the beginning of the word that follows it. If we did, we would sound absurd. You think about a phrase like his shoe. You never hear the z in his shoe when somebody is speaking naturally. It's his shoe. Right?
God bless
the z
you.
is completely gone. Right, thank you. In the pronunciation etc., it's really a kind of assimilation to make it more natural to say. Now, English and French both have this variant pronunciation of etc. And in both languages, etc. is the only word that starts with et instead of x, which is so much more common.
E.T. Cetera. It's the song that Peter,
Like Peter?
Sarah sings for the E.T. movie.
He doesn't.
Oh, no, that's Karate Kid Part 2.
Wouldn't it then be et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, right? Etc. reminds me of the mispronunciation of
Espresso?
yes.
Yes.
The Sabrina Carpenter word.
Sabrina Carpenter word? Did I miss
She's got
that?
a song.
It's a big deal on the
Is
pop
the song
music
called
world.
Espresso?
It
or
is it's espresso. She doesn't say espresso.
There are etymological grounds for both.
And so you shouldn't judge people when they do this harshly. Like your dictionary judged you when you said mischievous when you arrived there.
That's true.
But it is still more standard to say espresso as opposed to espresso, right?
Well, it's more common. Both pronunciations and both spellings actually date to the 1950s in English. And the ultimate Latin root is exprimere, meaning to press or squeeze out.
So the X has some precedent there. So be kind.
does.
Be kind
It
to
does.
your barista.
Now, for a long time, the etymological justification for disparaging people who say espresso was the belief was that the name of the coffee in Italian had to do with the pressing that is a part of the actual making of the coffee, right? You've got the coffee brewed by forcing steam or hot water through finely ground coffee. And the idea was that it is that pressing that happens that was key to the word's name in Italian. But more recent evidence suggests that no, it is the fact that the coffee was received by the coffee drinker that much more quickly. It was made expressly for one person and it was provided to them express.
So wouldn't that mean both of these things lend itself to be more correct to say espresso?
Yeah.
Both-
I mean,
both
there's
the
definitely an
pressing and the
etymological
speed?
justification, espresso and for espresso.
I don't think I can bring myself to say espresso. I just
You
can't
don't
do
have
it.
to.
I don't.
This is the beauty of the language. You can choose.
Yeah. You can
You can
espresso
say-
yourself however you'd like.
like Madonna.
Espresso.
Your love to the
This
test.
conversation also makes me think about nuclear and nuclear.
Oh yeah.
Right?
To me, this used to be a litmus test about whether or not you were going to be a valuable world leader. And there was a certain president long ago now that always said nuclear.
The idea of Iran having a nuclear weapon is unacceptable.
I feel like this is more of a regional thing, but maybe that's just me.
It is more common in some regions, but those regions are far flung. I don't think it's actually from a particular region. It is interesting that people who say nuclear do say words like molecular. Molecular is the model that nuclear follows.
You mean molecules, right?
I do mean molecules. But it's not that it's hard to say because we say the word likelier. Nobody says likeler.
Although I would like to start.
Poor abandoned pronunciation all alone on a snowfield waiting for someone to come about and use it properly is likeler.
Likeler.
The drivers behind particular kinds of pronunciation are varied and strong, right? There's what you're raised with, there's what you hear, which has to do with, what media you pay attention to or what podcasts you listen to or what your family said, where you're from. These things all affect what pronunciation is the one that makes the most sense to you. We've talked about it often before also, and often about how the favored pronunciation for a long time was influenced by what Queen Elizabeth I preferred.
Which was which?
She preferred often.
She softened the often.
Yeah. Often is easier, but soften is difficult.
Yeah. Downy fabric softener.
Yeah.
No.
No.
It doesn't work.
No.
Right.
Downy freshness makes a difference. Love your mother.
But often is widely used, and there's who knows why the Queen didn't like it.
Softener is a floppy Hamilton.
Mm-hmm. Soft tenor.
Washington is watching from the other side.
Sounds like a New York Times crossword clue.
Wait, what was it you just said?
I said a soft tenor is a floppy Hamilton.
Talking about currency at this point. Yeah.
Are there cases where, like mischievous and mischievous, where we're adding a syllable to the pronunciation?
No other one comes to my mind. And we're not just adding another syllable, we're also changing the accented syllable of the word.
Right.
But I don't know of another word where the variant has that exact kind of shift.
But if you can think of one, listener, let us know. thefab413@nepm.org. Like Wes Bowser emailed this question and asked of the word nerd about mischievous versus mischievous. And so to further answer your question, school counselor from South End Middle School in Springfield, it is non-standard the way that the majority of you at that school are using it, mischievous. as opposed to mischievous, but that we don't know of any cultural or geographic bent as to who pronounces what.
But isn't a word better when it's got a syllabic pocket to put all of your tricks in?
Love it. It's a mischievous word. It's, dare I say, mischievous. I love this song.
The word nerd said mischievous is the only word she knows of ending in "vus," but listener Matt W. emailed, what about nervous? Well played, Matt W.
But that still fits in with the, these are not necessarily good traits you think of as good.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and if you've got more, please send them our way. We are genuinely curious. We'll check in with more kids as soon as we talk with Western Mass Head Start Executive Director Nicole Blaze about the possible perils facing the program on a federal front.
But first, families, as we hear about a father and son each helming two events of their very own in Northampton this weekend. One to aid Palestinians and one to highlight queer voices in acoustic music. Tom and Stefan Wiener will join us.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Northeast Solar, helping customers make the switch to solar for savings, energy security, and tax incentives. Learn more at northeast-solar.com. The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by Window World of Western Mass, a local family business with experienced craftsmen offering wood, vinyl, and composite windows. windowworldofwesternma.com.
Two seemingly disparate events are happening this Saturday in Northampton. One is a polar plunge to help benefit children growing up in the West Bank and Palestine, and the other is a concert at the Parlor Room.
One of the connections between these two events is our two guests, a father and son. The father, Tom Wiener, is a semi-retired mediator, editor, tutor, workshop facilitator, author, and teacher affiliated with our friends at the Lighthouse School in Holyoke. He is a major supporter of the Palestinian House of Friendship, an organization founded by Mohammed Sawalha. The goal of the organization and this polar plunge in Northampton Saturday is to support children and their families in Nablus in the West Bank who are under continuous assault by settlers and the Israeli Defense Force.
Then on Saturday night, Tom's son, Stefan Wiener, will be performing at the Parlor Room in Northampton. Stefan is a New York City-based queer indie folk singer-songwriter originally from Northampton. He was recently a top shelf finalist in NPR's Tiny Desk Contest 2024. Stefan will be playing the Parlor Room in his old hometown of Northampton this Saturday, February 8th.
It's an interesting conversation that we're going to try to have here because we, as we mentioned, are talking about two separate things, and in reality, it's really just the father-son connection that brings it all together here. But first, let's start with a question about Palestinian House of Friendship. Tom, tell us what the Palestinian House of Friendship is and how you got associated with it.
The Palestinian House of Friendship's been in existence since the mid-90s when Mohammed Sawalha was inspired by what seemed like a peace agreement with Bill Clinton and Rabin and Arafat. And when that fell apart, Mohammed said, I want to continue promoting democracy, but my best bet is to work with children in the next generation because we're struggling too much currently. In the early 2000s, he turned it into a child-centered, family-centered organization that now runs everything from a music studio to a skate park to summer camps to boxes of love where they put together $50 worth of incredible things that families require and on and on. This past year put together a democracy project bringing workshops to adult men and women in the West Bank in democracy building, which was really his initial purpose back in the 1990s.
So how does a Jewish man from Northampton get involved and inspired by it? What was your initial connection to it?
Well, I was in Israel in 1972 and fell in love with much of what I was experiencing on a kibbutz, and also got to experience Muslim, Arab, Palestinian culture in the two towns surrounding the kibbutz, Bet Shan and Afula, and developed an affinity for Palestinian people. And over the years, having left in 72, felt that there was a lot of injustice occurring. And as I met Mohammed Sawalha himself in the early 2010s and heard what he was doing, it felt like a no-brainer, like the toothpaste was out of the tube. Here were these people suffering, and here was this man saying, I'm here to help children, which has been really my life's work as a teacher.
That's Tom Wiener from Northampton, who will be hosting a polar plunge to benefit the Palestinian House of Friendship this Saturday at Musanti Beach. The goal is to raise about $10,000 for the Palestinian House of Friendship. I am supportive of supporting other people in this endeavor, but as somebody who has polar plunged previously, no thank you. That night, Stefan Wiener will be playing at the Parlor Room. And Stefan, you have an interesting story, but because you have your guitar and are ready to perform, why don't we hear a song and then we'll talk to you a little bit about your interesting story.
All right. Well, I'm going to play a song called Do Nothing, which is the first single off of my upcoming full-length album, which will be out on February 27th. I'm always going 100 miles an hour. I won't stop for no one. Who has the time to smell every flower? I never get anything done. My checklist, it just keeps getting longer. I wish that I had more time, but with you, baby, I can do nothing. Forget the hustle and grind. There will be more work tomorrow, but for now you got all of my mind. It's part of life in this starry-eyed city, giving it all that I've got. Climbing the ladder, if I don't stay busy, somebody else is taking my spot. Got to keep my eyes on the prize, but maybe just for tonight. Oh, with you, baby, I can do nothing. Forget the hustle and grind. There will be more work tomorrow, but for now you got all of my mind. Do 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 do. Baby, I can do nothing. Oh, forget the hustle and grind. There will be more work tomorrow, but for now, you got all of my mind. But for now, you got all of my mind.
That's Northampton-born, New York City-living Stephan Wiener, who's coming back to his hometown this Saturday, February 8th, 7:30 at the Parlor Room in Northampton, in a show with Jesse De Silva, and sounding great.
Thank you.
How did you come to guitar? Everyone's got a story on where they picked it up the first time.
I feel like this is a fun story. I was raised playing cello, started at the age of 6, dabbled in piano too, and I was not good at practicing cello. It was very much a slog. And so in order to eat up the allotted time that I was supposed to be, sitting with the cello, I would turn it over on its side and play it like a guitar. And eventually I was like, what am I doing here? Let's get some frets. And so I started playing guitar when I was about 11 or 12.
He played some brilliant cello improvisationally with the incredible cellist Gideon Freudman, who you may have heard of. They even performed when Stephan was 9 at the Coffee House in Wendell, just the two of them, improvisationally, 2 cellists up on stage before Stephan turned the cello into a guitar.
It sounds like your dad isn't over it yet, Stephan.
Absolutely not.
And I will say that, if you want to play the cello on its side like a guitar, there are a bunch of folks that actually do it that way. So just bring it back into the fold. It's one of your many instruments, so there's no reason to abandon it entirely.
There's always room for cello.
I actually played it on the recording of this song that's coming out later this month.
Oh, cool.
So you haven't given it up entirely. And Stephan, you have a really interesting background. You went to NYC. You worked with StoryCorps, which I try not to listen to on Friday mornings unless I really want to cry in the drive into work.
Of course.
And you also had a series of health issues when you were a child that led to a series of health issues as a grown-up that almost ended your musical career. Can you tell us a little bit about that story?
Sure. So, yeah, I was born with hydrocephalus, which is a congenital condition that affects the flow of fluid in the brain. And, that was definitely a part of my childhood. I had a series of operations and out of the hospital. But then in my 20s, I had just graduated from NYU, and I started experiencing pretty severe chronic pain. Started in my arms. It eventually moved to my throat, and then a bunch of other parts of my body. And it essentially stopped my career for about 4 years. And I just put all my energy into figuring out what was causing this mysterious condition. Ended up going to the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota because New York couldn't really help me. And, I was a case study amongst some university top doctors.
Wow.
They didn't know what was going on. Went to the Mayo Clinic, got diagnosed with a central neurological condition, did a 1.5 years of rehabilitation, and was finally able to get back on stage. 2019, obviously the next year, that put a pause on my career as well. But we're back in action again.
Here's another fun disease to deal with that nobody knows about.
I'm just going to say maybe none of your diagnosticians read any Douglas Adams, because this is very similar to the condition that the main characters have in Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency.
Oh, wow. Jeez, if only they'd gone to the Calise Clinic instead of the Mayo Clinic, it could have happened a lot easier. But, I mean...
Wish I'd come on this show earlier to hear about this book.
I listened to some of the podcasts that you were on talking about this, and, fear was a major factor in your pain, and then dealing with that fear is a major factor in overcoming it. So can you talk a little bit about how one rewires their brain in a way that can help literally remove some pain from their body that their body is creating?
Well, it's remarkable. I'll say, during the program when I was at Mayo, it was like being on a televangelist program where you see people like jump out of their wheelchairs, essentially, that they've been in for decades. The modality is it's based in cognitive behavioral therapy and mindfulness. And you essentially dive headfirst into your pain and do the activities that are causing pain for short bursts of time. And gradually those bursts get longer and longer. And in doing so, you sort of retrain your brain, rewire your brain manually so that it's no longer alarmed and afraid, like you were talking about, of those activities. And once the fear goes away or is reduced, the pain actually can be reduced with it, which is remarkable.
It's like HIIT for your nervous system.
What's that?
High impact intensive training. It's when you do really intense exercises for short bursts of time to teach your muscles things. I have correlations for everything. It's
incredible.
This is a sort of a complicated question, but I'm curious in no small part because my sister had childhood cancer, and that has a lot of impact on the things that she creates now. And although I know you try not to write songs about the same thing twice, have these subsequent illnesses had an effect on your style of songwriting?
100%. Because it's fundamentally changed the way that I look at the world. Having an invisible condition changes the way that you see other people and the assumptions that you make about them. But it also it complicates everything. It complicates dating. It complicates cooking dinner. I mean, like, everything is made more challenging by something like that. And then to learn eventually that so much of the journey out of it is through emotional, psychological interrogation that has dramatically impacted the subjects that I am drawn to write about.
My whole body hurts.
And a quick correction on my part, HIIT training is actually high intensity interval training to describe like how hard it is and how quickly you do it.
Cool.
On the way, another song from Stefan Wiener, and more on the Palestinian House of Friendship Polar Plunge happening in Northampton from Stefan's dad, Tom Wiener.
And later, with federal funds in jeopardy, what's the future of Head Start locally? We'll speak with the head of Head Start in Western Mass, Nicole Blaze.
You're listening to the Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
But if all the king's horses and all the king's men can't put me back together again,
That is Stephen Weiner, who will be performing at the Parlor Room, his hometown in Northampton, coming from New York City, where he lives now, to play back in Northampton. We're also speaking to Stephen's dad, Tom Weiner, who before the show on Saturday will be part of a polar plunge happening at Musante Beach in Northampton. That's an effort to raise $10,000 for the Palestinian House of Friendship. Tom, why a polar plunge?
We came up with the idea about 5 years ago. This is the fourth annual. The first one was before COVID, and it seemed like the fastest way to make a lot of money in the shortest time. For a record so far is $8,000 in 30 seconds.
Wow.
Obviously, prorating that is unheard of, but that would be quite the fortune for PHF.
For sure.
So that was the logic of it. And then, a lot of people do polar plunges, so we thought we could attract an audience. We do have Lindsay Sabadosa, the mayor, that will be joining us, and a statement from Jim McGovern, and Kelsey Flynn is the MC. So we've attracted some luminaries and some tremendous supporters.
How does an MC work at a polar plunge?
Well, one of the big things is the countdown, obviously, before we plunge in. But she's going to announce the people. We're also hoping to have Mohammed Sawala there via WhatsApp. For him to be able to do FaceTime or be able to say a few words. When he found out about the first plunge, when he came to visit in the days when he still could come here, he immediately said, the first thing I want to do when I come to Northampton is go to Musante Beach. I want to see where you did that. And of course, it was July, so he didn't have to take any risks.
That's a beautiful time to be there.
It's a much easier time to be there.
The work of Palestinian House of Friendship, focusing on education and the arts and all these things, and specifically with children, I think is an important thing, given all of the horrors that have been going on, not just over the past year and a half, but for decade after decade. And you, Tom, you were just in a book group that was discussing many of these same issues. Can you tell us a little bit about what you learned through this book group and who was part of that?
Well, Interlink Publishing, which is publishing a book I've written with Dr. Shabazz that I'll tell you about in a minute, published a book called The Wall Between: What Jews and Palestinians Don't Want to Know About Each Other, by Raja Khoury, a Palestinian, and Jeff Wilkinson, a Jew. And they put this book together with their friendship as the underpinning and the ways in which they have transcended humongous differences by listening to understand each other. And that was the message of the book, along with much else. So 4 Muslim-raised people from Jordan, Lebanon, Palestinian woman, and someone from a Turkish Kurdish woman, and 4 Ashkenazi Jews from the Valley met for 4 weeks and discussed the ideas of the book. Then invited Raja and Jeff 3 weeks ago, sponsored by Forbes Library. 415 people registered for the event. Recordings are available, and it has really brought us together as a group. We got together for the first time in person 2 Sundays ago and made a commitment to ongoing efforts to bring people of disparate views together.
Is there a takeaway that you got from that book group that you feel like you're carrying with you now that continues to help in these dialogues that can be so difficult?
I guess the most important one is believing now that it's possible. We call ourselves the Bridging the Divide Coalition. So I guess I now have a renewed or a new faith that these various views can be in the same, Zoom room, and developing incredible empathy and compassion by having each other hear each other's stories and realities.
That's educator and author Tom Weiner, who's part of the Palestinian House of Friendship's Polar Plunge that will be happening at Musante Beach on Saturday morning in Northampton. We are also joined by Tom's son, Stephen Weiner, who will be performing that evening at the Parlor Room in Northampton. Stephen, might you be prepared to do another song for us?
Can I just detune one string?
Please do. You tune because you care.
Oh, I'm so glad that you know that. Also, Monty, I think it is funny that perhaps the last time you and I spoke was when I was 16 years old at Northampton High School.
Remind me what that was about?
The Northamptons.
Right. I love the Northamptons. Hey, and we'll shameless plug them. Part of the Silver Cord Bowl on Sunday in Northampton.
They're always a part of the Silver.
They always kick it off. So there we go.
Susan Dillard, the incredible new leader of the Northamptons, has told me about their repertoire, and you should all be very excited.
Oh, excellent. So now we have your Saturday and Sunday planned for Northampton.
Oh, man.
Well, let's hear another song, Stephen.
All right. This song is called I Scared Him Off. Send another message. Maybe he'll respond. It's been a couple days now. He's been so withdrawn. Maybe it's all over. Or is he playing hard to get? I just keep on squeezing until there's nothing left. I scared him off. I scared him off. Came on a little too strong, like I always do. I scared him off. I scared him off. Asking for too much too soon. I see him in the faces of every blue-eyed boy. We had so much potential, so much to destroy. Outside on that blanket, I said it was profound. This was something special. Look at what we found. I scared him off. I scared him off. Came on a little too strong, like I always do. I scared him off. I scared him off. Asking for too much too soon. I scared him off, just like everyone before. In the game of love, I am always keeping score. Oh, what's the rush? Why can't we just explore? I scared him off. I scared him off. Came on a little too strong, like I always do. I scared him off. I scared him off. Asking for too much too soon. I scared him off. I scared him off. Came on a little too strong, like I always do. I scared him off. I scared him off. Asking for too much too soon. Asking for too much too soon.
Thank you. That is Stefan Wiener, who will be at the Parlor Room in Northampton this Saturday with Jesse De Silva. Stefan was an NPR Tiny Desk finalist. Got an amazing shout out from Julian Baker, who was playing the Green River Festival this summer. It will be exciting. And also you have a new album coming out in the spring, right?
I do. It's coming out in May.
How does that feel different from your previous EP?
Interestingly, with all of the health issues that I had, I was living in a house that had a recording studio in the basement. And even though I was sick and I couldn't sing or play guitar, I had all this music that I wanted to record. So I had a bunch of friends play all these instrumentals for me that I had written. And then it took until 2022 to actually record those songs. And so that's all the music that I've put out for the last year and a half. And the latest EP is included in that. This new album is one that I was able to record and produce myself and play almost all the instruments on myself. And, to be able to do that now, to have the freedom and the lack of pain to be able to pull that off feels incredible. So it really feels like the complete closing of that chapter and the opening of hopefully a good career.
I know that the night that you're doing at the Parlor Room is definitely queer focused.
Oh, yeah.
We're for it. But do you and Tom ever get the chance to collaborate on events for both of your communities simultaneously, or one or the other? Because you both seem to be very out there in supporting the communities that you see in need and are a part of.
We haven't done that collaboration, but it's certainly a good idea.
This is the closest you've come so far, right? Because we put you both on the same show because you have events on the same day and you're a father and a son. I think it's good. It's a first step in the right direction. And Stefan, we'll have you back on, hopefully, if you come around again when the album is out.
I would love to.
And Tom, you have a book coming out with our friend Amilcar Shabazz a little bit later this year. And we'll have to have you two come on to talk about their amazing book about abolitionists that we've never heard of before.
Fabulous. I'd love that.
Great. Well, Tom is behind the Palestinian House of Friendship's Polar Plunge happening at Musanti Beach this Saturday morning. And Stefan is part of the show that will be happening at the Parlor Room in Northampton Saturday night with Jesse De Silva. Thanks, Dad and son, for joining us today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
If you're interested in learning more or supporting the Polar Plunge, we'll post a link with our podcast.
And tickets for Stefan's show, as always, can be found at parlorroom.org.
And up next, how a federal funding freeze may impact our local Head Start programs with director Nicholie Blaze. Nicholie? Jesus.
You're listening to The Fabulous 413 on 88.5 NEPM.
We have one segment with the word nerd about mispronunciations and see what happens.
The Fabulous 413 podcast is funded by the UMass 5 College Credit Union, offering co-op advantage checking with cash back on all purchases, plus secure debit card controls, all from the UMass 5 mobile banking app. Insured by NCUA, umass5.coop.
Welcome back to the Fabulous 413. We're taking a look at Head Start, a program of the United States Department of Health and Human Services that provides comprehensive early childhood education, health, nutrition, and parent-involved services to low-income children and families. And we are joined by Nicole Blaze, Executive Director of Head Start, Holyoke, Chicopee, and Springfield.
Nicole has spent most of her career with Head Start, beginning in 1996 as the parent education and support specialist for Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield Head Start. For a decade, she's developed and implemented various parent and family engagement programming and other parent-driven activities. She supervised the team, began making a name for herself, speaking and presenting throughout the Commonwealth, as well as National Head Start Association conferences across the country.
In 2012, Nicole Blaze transitioned to the position of Director of Community Engagement, where she spent another 10 years supporting the work of Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield Head Start. But the next phase of her career came when her mentor, Jenna Santos, HCS Head Start's longtime CEO, announced her retirement. In 2021, amid the pandemic, Blaze began her most recent role as CEO of Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield Head Start, the organization. And the burning question for you, is there going to be a snow day tomorrow?
Oh, there is a good possibility that will happen.
Do you make that call?
I do.
Yeah.
Oh.
Always I wonder about how heavy lies the crown on those kind of decisions.
It is. We are up very early sometimes.
Yeah. The real question about freezing is not having to do with snow. It's having to do with the federal government. And last week, there was a memo that went out that all federal funding was frozen, including potentially for Head Start. Now, I know some Head Start organizations across the country are still locked out of the websites and the federal funding. Is your organization one of those?
No, our organization is completely fine.
Okay.
And there are about 4 in Massachusetts that are still having trouble accessing what we call the payment management system to be able to draw down their funds.
Why are some able to access it and others aren't?
There are lots of people trying to answer that very question, but I keep checking with our fiscal team every day to make sure that we can draw down, and we are okay. So we're good.
What about our neighbors to the north? We mentioned, we were talking off the air about how Community Action is in charge of some of the Head Start programs.
Yeah, we do, right. There are 29 Head Start programs across the state. Every community across the country has a Head Start program that is, assigned to that community. So we always are checking in with each other, obviously, to make sure things are good. As far as I know, our friends in Northampton are okay as well.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yes.
Yeah, especially because programs like this are always kind of a collaborative effort between the state and federal governments. But what exactly does it mean if you only end up having to rely on state funding for this program?
Sure. And I can back up a teeny little bit too to give a little more context in terms of just how Head Start is funded and how all of that looks. And there happened to be a Head Start Leadership Institute last week, so there were several Head Start leaders in Washington, D.C. Last week. I was there
What a terrible
as well.
time.
When the memo went out?
When the memo went out. So, I think it was, divine intervention, if you will, that Head Start happened to be, or representatives from Head Starts across the country happened to be in D.C. Last week when the memo went out. So some folks saw the memo before they went to bed on Monday, and some, of course, read the memo when everyone woke up on Tuesday, and we were all gathered together and kind of trying to make sense of what was what. And we were this conference was hosted by the National Head Start Association. So it was wonderful to be with fellow colleagues as we were trying to make sense of everything. Our purpose for going to Washington is on that Wednesday. We had scheduled visits with our congressional leaders so that, again, the timing was just good for us then to be on the Hill on Wednesday, where over 240, senators, Congress people had visits by their local Head Start programs to, one, of course, thank them. Head Start has been around since 1965, so we're celebrating our 60th year, and to then also share about what work was happening in their local district so that they had some hands-on, information data. We had staff with us. Programs had parents with them, too, to really give testimony about what the program means to them, their child, and their family. So it was just great that we were there. Obviously halfway through that morning, I believe it was a Tuesday, we did learn through another memo to clarify that Head Start was exempt from the federal pause, if you will. So there was a collective sigh of relief and information and texts and emails going back. I was doing with my board, with everyone, back here at the program. Our agency, we have about 11 centers throughout Holyoke, Chicopee, and Springfield. I bet you can't guess where we started, what city we started with. Holyoke.
Is that why it gets it the first letter in HCS?
HCS. We had Holyoke, we had Chicopee, we had Springfield.
Oh, nice.
And, just again to kind of temper, concerns and fears of and parents as well, as everyone it was hearing this information all at the same time and trying to make sense of it all together. So we are very, obviously very grateful that Head Start was exempt from that funding freeze, but it did cause everyone, great pause and to think about what it would mean if we did lose our funding, to so many children and families throughout our area here in the 413, but also across the Commonwealth and across the country. Head Starts everywhere, and also in the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico.
You also do get some money from the State Department of Early Childhood Education, right? So if, let's say, the federal funding is totally cut off, is Head Start locally going to be able to survive that?
Well, it's interesting because Head Start is a national model. So it was created during the 1965 War on Poverty. It was one of the programs where the thought was if children, have access to good nutrition, good healthy children are ready to learn. They started this project, Head Start, in the summer of 1965, and it was an 8-week summer program to make sure that children from vulnerable backgrounds that might not have the same opportunities afforded from some of their other peers, that they, when they arrived to kindergarten that in the fall, they would also, or we were giving children a head start so that they were ready to learn. And so that obviously program was a great success. And for us, the Junior League of 1965 of Holyoke took it upon themselves to write for one of these grants. And so we're always very, it reminds us when a small group of committed people get together, kind of, they might not realize kind of the seeds they're planting. But 60 years ago, they were awarded, monies for one Head Start classroom. It was housed in the Holyoke Housing Authority. And then 60 years later, the rest is history. And now we're serving about, under 500 preschoolers. And we have about a little over 100 or so infants and toddlers, about 220 staff. So we're doing what we like to think about wonderful work, with some very, critical, important little ones to make sure that they are ready to learn and excited about school and are ready to rock and roll when they arrive in kindergarten.
Oh. But are you going to be able to be funded if the federal funds get cut off?
We are. Well, first of all, we're not going to let that happen.
Okay.
And we're going to make sure that we are letting the community know about the wonderful impact that Head Starts are having. We are obviously going to continue to advocate, in D.C. with our lawmakers. Head Start is an Head Start Act. It is written into law.
So if they pull the plug, it is against
a
written law that has been passed through Congress.
Correct. You're going to have to... Go ahead.
No. My laughter is wry and pay no attention.
Yeah.
Well, yes. I mean, these are very uncertain times. So I do not have a crystal ball. There are, no guarantees. But we're ready. We're ready to, we've had peaks and valleys throughout the 60 years, in terms of we've had increases when Republicans have been in office. We've had flat funding or decreases when Democrats have been, in office. And so we're just going to ride the ride, and we're going to make sure that everyone knows about the wonderful work that Head Start does.
And hopefully we'll get a chance to talk with you a little bit more about that in the future, because you've got a real cool program at the Stick campus, and you've done some other really neat programming with the greater community, bringing those little ones and getting them ready, and their families as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, you can check out NEPM's website and see the reportage that Rufani Williams did about that new Stick campus one, and there was a possibility that might expand into this.
Yeah, we're hoping. We're hoping to open another classroom. We need staff to do that, but that's we put it out in the universe, and it's going to happen.
All that up in the air right now is even certain Head Start programs across the country can no longer access these funds, but interesting to hear, and I guess a relief for our local Head Start programs that Holyoke, Chicopee, and Springfield Head Start can access those funds, as well as the Head Start programs run by Community Action north of here and the other parts of the valley. Nicole Blaze, who's the CEO of Holyoke, Chicopee, Springfield Head Start, thanks for giving us a little insight into the history and current situation of Head Start.
And alleviating some of our, anxieties that I'm sure are shared by greater community.
Oh, absolutely.
Which you can hear more about on tomorrow's show. On the next Fabulous 413, first we dance as De La Luz brings a new curated dance night to the Valley, and we'll hear from DJ Theory about the origins of More Love and bringing more of the world to the dance floor in the 413.
I hear tell there might be a quiz involved. We'll also chat with Ido Moore of Secret Planet, who's helped design the night and have a festival on the horizon with their Almost Spring Weekender.
And our weekly chat with U.S. Congressman Jim McGovern, where this Head Start funding, federal funding, and more will evidently come up. And a million listener questions that have come in this week.
So many listener questions. We're so proud of you. Thank you for engaging.
But we'll take more. The Fab 413 at nepm.org. I'm Monty Belmonte.
I'm Khalees Smith. We will talk to you tomorrow on the Fabulous 413.